Every single person listening to this, we don't want our producers making the dials needed to get results from leads. That's the first thing. We definitely need to have that tele-team plugged in and making those dials. The only way that you will ever supersede or outperform some high water mark that is seemingly unattainable at this moment is to throw away any past prior misconceptions about what is actually possible. Every single person listening to this has within themselves and their agency the ability to do 200K a month, 300K a month, heck, 500K a month. You can get there at some point, but there's some fundamentals that have to be in place once we've thrown that out the window, or old number, right? I remember the most that agency could have done in old Craig's mind was 50K a month. Beyond 50K, that was impossible. That was something that only people put on Facebook that somehow magically were unicorns and were able to do it. But what wasn't understood, and I'm not going to point any finger or hold any fault, there wasn't any guidance as to what needed to be done, the how to get to that what, right? The what is writing the 100, right? The first big milestone was to get to 100K. The next big milestone was to get to 200K. The one after that, 250, 300, right? As we slowly inch up and get to some number. So there's some important things that have to go into place. We touched a little bit on part of this, which is having the right people in the right seats, right? Right butts in the right seats. We don't want our producers making the dials needed to get results from leads. That's the first thing. We definitely need to have that tele-team plugged in and making those dials, right? Some kind of consistency on the front end of the telefunnel, and then on the back end, the producers who are taking those transfers, taking those callbacks, who are taking advantage of all of that opportunity that's created by the initial activity and then turning that into sales. So what do we need to do? We have to watch those inputs. What are the inputs, right? We have to quantify what we need to come in the front end in the way of activity. Let's forget about the output. Let's forget about the number, the how much we're going to sell. Let's forget about all that stuff and only focus on the activity, because when we focus on the activity, we get to the result. I was talking with one of our agents who works with us on Teledudes. He's up 100% over last year. We were messaging this morning and we were talking about this very thing, right? We were talking about how important it is to look at capacity of your sales team. So again, let's not focus on the ultimate what at this moment. Let's focus on the how. How are we going to get there? And that's by focusing and putting all our attention and energy on the inputs and the activity around those inputs. So there's a certain number of leads that needs to come in per person making the dials to make contact with those leads. Contact rate can vary based off of geography. There's no set number, so I'm not going to start throwing numbers around. We want to learn those numbers, know those numbers, have that benchmark, and then you hold accountable to those benchmarks. The next part is, are the sales agents at capacity? So this is what I was talking about with Steve, one of our clients who was asking about these things, right? When do I add additional callers? I'm not going to add or remove callers until salespeople are at capacity. Okay. So, or rather, I'm not going to add producers until the current sales producers are at capacity. And we can toggle whether they're at capacity or over capacity or under capacity based off of the inputs. So we're going to have as many tele-team members as it takes to get our producers to capacity. Because once we have a producer at capacity, and from an activity standpoint, I will throw a number out there. 10 quoted households is about peak capacity for producers. Anything more, they're going too quick. They're starting to make decisions that they shouldn't be making, which is, this is a good one, this is a bad one. So that's where we draw the line. Yes, I've had people that can do 12. Yes, maybe even a little bit more, but a rule of thumb is 10 quoted households. If we have a producer who's doing 2 quoted households, well, heck, we're not going to add another producer until we are consistently getting very high talk times out of that producer. Then we know, okay, this person is right where they need to be. Let's add another one. Of course, we're going to have to add more on the tele-team side in order to push the additional activity to that producer. So that's another important piece. As we scale producers, we're going to have to add on the front end of the funnel too. So things to consider, really important, but we got to track and measure. You got to track all of the most important stuff. Forget about a lot of the other things. In that conversation with Steve, another thing was like focusing on the sales. Forget about that, right? We just want to focus on the activity, because when we focus on the activity, the sales will follow. That is it for a playbook. That is how you're going to sell more than you ever did, by just getting the right butts in the seats, holding them accountable, and making sure that your salespeople are at capacity. We don't want any no idle salespeople. Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon.